Welcome to another episode of Driving to the Res with your favorite hosts,
Inelia. You're first, remember?
I forgot. Inelia and Larry. And we're actually home at the Res at the moment.
Yeah, we were going to do the recording while we were driving because, that was the whole reason we did this, driving to the Res. We didn't just come up with that name because we thought it was clever or something. It was like,
when we're driving to
all these driving to the Reses, we got all these interesting conversations about all these interesting things. We should record them.
But our truck is so loud.
Our truck is kind of loud, yeah. Which, in some ways, it is actually driving, right?
Yeah.
In other ways, it's annoying.
Yeah.
It's nice to have good sound.
Mm-hmm.
So, we compromised. Yeah. We have our nice conversations, and then we
pause them.
I think we're going to have to update our... we actually aren't doing that much driving lately, are we?
No, we haven't been doing much driving. No.
I think I can count the number of times we've driven to the Res in a month. It's down to like 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. And it used to be every day, 3 or 4 times a week.
Yep.
Just cut down quite a lot. Yeah. And going to town, when's the last time you went to town?
I don't remember.
Don't even remember?
No.
You've been a bit of a hermit?
Yeah.
How come? What's with the hermit?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know?
I find it more pleasant not to go into town because, I'm sensitive. I feel into all sorts of energies, not just EMF energies, but also people's energies, physical body energies. And it's very unpleasant for me, so I prefer not to.
So you prefer the company of your tribe as opposed to the company of the unwashed masses?
Yes. Yes.
I guess that makes perfect sense. So our... plus, we have our roomies who like to go to town on a regular basis.
Our
and they're happy
members,
to pick stuff up.
That's right, they do.
So it's working out fine. And how's that working out for us?
Yeah, I like it.
You like it?
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, well, we're making progress on the Res. Land again.
We think.
Yes.
Yes.
It's an interesting set of stop-starts, and it's interesting because of our skills and abilities at manifesting, right? Mm-hmm. Really getting our land flattened and property with a house built on it. That should be like a breeze, right?
Yeah, 2 years later, we're still sitting on the messed up land. At least we have the land.
Yes. Well, we have made progress and we have made steps, and we do have electricity, we do have an RV, we have a barn. Mm-hmm. We haven't got all of the bits and the bobs done, but it's a
very close
process, not a
destination.
Right. Is that how we're going to look at it, or what?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, today, actually, what I wanted to talk about was your trip to New York, because I know...
New York City!
Yeah, because it was pretty amazing how it all got orchestrated and worked out.
Yeah, it is actually... I don't know what other people think about New York as the city. I know we've talked about if you live in the city, move out. Mm-hmm. And it, looks like they did that.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It does look like that's been...
There's hardly any people there.
But the thing about New York City and a visit to New York City right now, it seems implausible that I would travel to New York to go hang out for the weekend, right?
Yes.
Go see the sights.
Yeah.
What would bring that about, Well, my daughter, Grace, she's 18 now, and she's applied to all the colleges she ever dreamed that she'd ever want to get into. And she managed to get 100% grades in all of her classes. Mm-hmm. And she managed to get admitted to Columbia and Stanford and, she's waitlisted on Harvard. Mm-hmm. All these fancy-ass, expensive, wonderful, neat, interesting bastions of the old paradigm, I suppose you might consider. Yeah. Because they are, right? Aren't they the recruiters for...
Oh, yeah.
How would you describe them? Go ahead.
Me? Describe them?
How would you describe...
Slaves? You did ask. You did ask.
Recruiters of slaves?
Yeah.
Aren't there other recruiters of slaves? I mean, I guess we got to talk about this a little bit because there are multiple colleges, right?
Yes.
There's community colleges. There's
different levels
state
of slaves.
colleges, state universities. There's 2 years.
The slaves that tell other slaves what to do.
Yeah. Right. There's different levels of slavehood. Yeah. Is that how you look at it?
Yeah.
And this is obviously triggers some people, myself not included. So we've talked about this before, the education system, right? Mm-hmm. Although we also are the products of the educational system.
Yeah.
To a large degree. And did keep me asleep all the way up until, I think, 2010-ish? Asleep and happy.
You know, I have an interesting story to tell about the indoctrination of education.
Okay.
Because when I was 7, there was a military coup in Chile and my parents were taken away into concentration camps and torture and all the rest. But what happened to me personally was that I was basically moved from house to house, from relative to relative, from city to city. And then my mom was released and she took us to Argentina to get away from that situation.
Would have been nice to have listened in the older story time and skipped the entire coup part.
Oh yeah, that would have been great.
That would have been
but
great.
It didn't happen. Yeah. And then there was a coup in Argentina. So we were moving around there too. And eventually my sister and I went back to Chile. And my mom and my brother stayed in Argentina. And then they ended up in Great Britain. Scotland first and then England. And I was then sent to my mom in Scotland. So I lived there for a little bit. And then I went to England. But at the time I didn't speak any English. And so school was bubble, you know. But what I actually noticed as a child, moving through all these different schools in different cities and countries and everything, was that the older I got, the older the other children got, I could see that the older they got, the more indoctrinated into being good little workers they became. And because I kept shifting and swapping and moving, I didn't get it. I didn't get that. And I could see them getting it, and more and more and more. And the older I got, the more they got, you know, like just good little soldiers, you know, listening to orders and doing what they were told. And of course I didn't. I rebelled all the way. And when I was in high school, I used to go to school once a week or so. And they used to send the truant officer to my house and trying to catch me and all that type of stuff.
So you're a regular Ferris Bueller, huh?
And then, I don't know what that is, but...
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, if you don't know. Look it up.
Okay. I will look it up, I guess, because you're not going to tell us. And then what happened was, at the end of my high school career, the assistant headmaster asked me to his office, and he said, okay, Inelia, so here's the thing. In England, at the end of the first part of high school, you get what's called O-levels, ordinary levels, or they used to, I don't know what they're called now, and GCSEs, which is general education type thing. One of them is, if in case you haven't really managed to get a good education, and the other ones are, if you get good grades, you sit for the O-levels. But if you don't really get good grades, it's better to do the other ones. And all the children sit both. All the children will sit both end of the high school education exams. At the time, that was it. You'd set your exams for your exams, and that's all the grades that went towards your entire life. Everything you'd done before was 0. Now it's changed. Now, for the last 2 years of high school, the grades that you have go towards your final numbers. But at the time, it was just the exams. That was it, right? So he says, because you haven't bothered with coming to school or partaking in anything, I'm only going to write you down for one of them. So you choose. Do you want to sit down for O-levels or GCSEs? And I said, I'll take the O-levels. He says, okay. And he did. Because I got excellent grades in them. But it was really like that. You know, it's like I couldn't conform. I was offered placements in private schools for the A levels with advanced education, which is ages 17 and 18. And I refused it because I was like, yeah, don't want any of that. So instead of doing that, I started my first company and carried on from there. But the education system, I could see how it worked, even though I had been taught how it worked when I was a very small child at home. Because of my dad's social status, he knew about education. Even though he did the regular education himself, went to university, became a professor and all that type of stuff, I think mostly to be rebellious. And his sister also went and did that. She became a high school teacher. But the education was different to people who were not to be indoctrinated. And mine was accidental because I kept moving so much that it never happened, right? Never happened. The indoctrination never took hold. And the times that I've been employed in my life, it's probably about 6 months maybe altogether, that I've held a paid job that somebody else actually pays me for what I do. And one of them was as a favor to a friend who needed a waitress, an emergency waitress, and I went to help her. So every other time I've worked for myself, really. So yeah, education. So yeah, tell us about New York and education. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to be part of the system, that's where you want to go. You want to go to the top universities because if you're going to be part of that system, you want to get the best paid jobs and be the one calling the shots, right?
Yeah, I suppose there's that. I mean, there's also why would you send your kids off to be indoctrinated? I mean, there's so many levels to the whole thing, right? And I can see the effects of indoctrination on her, in her, what we call it, her conformity. I suppose she's very conform. I don't know. It was like, well, if you got a straight 100% in all of your classes, you're really very strongly focused on something, right? And we're led to understand that's a great thing. Excelling at the system and doing a very, very good job of it and getting 100% A pluses seems like a good thing, and it also seems like a bad thing. What is it? Do you see what I mean? If
your kid or you want your kid to do well financially in the machine, right? In the overall indoctrinated world, then yeah, you want them to go to the best university and get best grades and get indoctrinated, right? Because that's how they're going to function within it. And if you don't want them to, then you don't. Simple.
Well, what does what I want to do have to do with it at all?
Because you sent them to school, honey.
Well, they're adults to decide what they're going to do.
Now, after 20 years on indoctrination, or 18 or whatever.
What I mean is, I think it's a reflection of the system, I suppose, and that's the part that I'm trying to get at. It's like, it's hard to not be happy and proud of her for doing really, really well, even though it's within a system that it's sort of an indoctrination system, and I don't like some of the consequences. She's sharp-witted and intelligent and capable, but she's also conformed, and breaking through that. If we can have one and figure out how to shatter the other a little bit, if you shatter the other, then the one is at risk in a sense because it's no longer important. The reason I think that it becomes and stays important for her to get all these grades is because of the other device of do good, do excel, etc., etc., etc. It's very important to get these good grades, and that part that comes with the other conforming with society part brings those grades with it.
Yep.
If she had dropped those conforming things, the grades would be irrelevant and not important. And the interesting part's going to class and learning about this, or writing because she likes to write, and learning some of the devices, getting a exposure to things that she might not otherwise get exposure to. Those things would be important, but the grades are irrelevant. But in order to get those things, you got to have the grades too. So it's like, in my view, it's confusing.
Mm-hmm. Well, her aim was to be accepted in all the top universities in the country. That was her goal since she was 12 or 10.
Yeah, I think her dream school at that time is Stanford, and then her brother got into Stanford. So
she was gutted.
And now, it's like, oh, cool.
Now she can't
super
be first.
Achiever brother beat me to it. Now what am I going to do to, excel over that? Yeah. So she got accepted to Stanford and Columbia. and she is provisionally accepted at Harvard.
Yeah.
And her Duke and her Northwestern. She got accepted at a bunch of colleges. And so, that's sibling rivalries and, whatever. It was her inspiration to perform, maybe. I don't know. It's like added a little spice to the fire and had her apply to places that maybe she wouldn't have before. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I really didn't know much about Columbia, honestly, until she got accepted there. And it was surprising and curious to me, because I really don't follow a lot of colleges. I know about Stanford, I know about Harvard, I've heard of Princeton, but I think that's the end of my heard about them. When I was graduated from high school, I think there was one like Trinity, and I had a whole bunch of ones in the mail, but they were just names. And my dad said he wasn't paying for no college. And I didn't have any money.
You didn't know that.
I didn't know they had loans. If I'd have known that, I would have a giant student loan right now, because I would probably still be in school, because I rather liked it,
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, is that I acknowledge that I did become, to some degree, brainwashed, I guess, or driven or focused in a certain way through school. I definitely have that, but I spent all my time in the library. I had 100 books under my arm. I read every book in the library. I'd enjoyed the environment of learning.
Oh, me too. Yeah,
so I don't see it as all conform and negative and bad. I only saw the part that I got, which was freaking awesome.
But you didn't go to university.
I would have, and I'm sure I would have had a freaking awesome time.
Well, I went to university.
And how did that do for you?
Well, it was really funny, because I went to one of the top universities in Ireland. And the only reason that I became interested, I was in my early 20s, I think I was in 22, 23, something like that. So it wasn't that far from me dropping out of school at 17 after I did my O-levels. I never did the A-levels, right? And one of my friends was what's it called when a professor goes and somebody takes over for a while? What's that called?
Sabbatical.
No. He went on a sabbatical, and my friend took over his lectures, a substitute. So she was a substitute lecturer. And she said, "Oh my God, I'm substituting in this degree that I think you would love." She knew me. And she brought me the pamphlets and things about the degree, and it was communication studies. She knew all about me trying to learn how to communicate and just being obsessed with communication. And I'm looking at all the units in the degree, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is freaking awesome. It's interesting. I want to learn all this stuff. I want to do this degree. And of course, I hadn't finished my high school. I hadn't done any studying at all after that at all. There was nothing. So I applied. And they had a system, because I was just over the age when they consider you an adult student. they have a system where they take you in, you do an exam, which is like a mixture of an IQ test and something else. It was a really thick book, longish, and you basically had to answer all the questions in the book. And it was all sorts of weird stuff, from triangles to trees and people, situations, anecdotes, and all sorts of stuff. And it was really thick. Anyways, you had about 4 hours to finish it. And all the people were adults, right? I was the youngest adult there, because most people were in their 30s and 40s. Some of them in their 50s and 60s. I, within about an hour and a half or 2 hours, I was done. Because in England, the educational system there would train you to do well in exams. Because the exam was the only grade that was set for your life, right? So for the last year, all they would do is teach you how to do good in an exam. But anyways, the methodology was you answer everything you know. You go real fast through the book. You answer everything you know, 100%. Then you do the ones that you think you know. Then you do the ones you have to calculate. And then you do the ones that you don't know and just guess, right?
Yeah.
So I did that. And after about 2 hours, I finished, right? So I handed it in, and the guy looked at me again, are you sure? It's like, you still have 2 hours, if you want to work it. I know it's finished. And he says, well, you finished the entire book. Yeah. Oh, okay. So, and I was pretty pleased because it was really easy. As far as I was concerned, it was easy. And most of the ones that I was able to answer, right? The first go. So I wasn't too worried. And I left. And then, I got a letter when I went to the exam saying the exams are today. In about 4 months, you get a letter of requesting for you to do an interview if we think that you're a candidate, and if not, then you get a no, right? So great, I got 4 months to put my money together because I didn't have any. And then about 4 days later, I get a letter from the university that they're doing the interviews and they want me in on Monday.
That's a quick 4 months.
I know. And I'm like, what? I don't even have the money. And what am I going to do? And like that, And how do you do an interview, So I asked my friend. I said, okay, what's going on? She said, okay, so what's going to happen is there'll probably be the head of the department there. And maybe, so everybody that you might be studying under will be in a room. You're going to sit in a chair in the middle of the room, and they're going to be in front of you in a table, in front of a table or something. And she said, just be yourself. They just want to know what type of person you are. And I says, okay, cool. So, and when I got to the interview place, everybody that was doing interviews, these were people who had already done, the whole school thingy,
I don't know.
Indoctrination. They were doing the interviews for the students that came in with grades and excellent sports things and all that type of stuff, right?
Oh.
So the general public one, the kids.
Okay.
Right. And there was I, a little bit older than all the kids, about 4 years older than everybody else. But I arrive and they're all wearing suits and formal wear, and I was wearing this really bright, colorful kind of 60s leggings with lots of different colors and a purple sweater top that went down to nearly my knees.
So you're dressed like Second Life.
And it was like, oh no, oops. So I went inside and it was a little bit scary because, there was this room full of guys and girls, men and women, and they were all very serious with their books and, note-taking things, whatever they use, and they were all sitting in chairs. There was no table in front of them, thank goodness, but they had those chairs with a little table next to them.
Okay.
And there was one chair in the middle of the room, so I went down and sat there, and then the interview started. Right. And they started asking questions. Some of them were interesting questions, And,
it was a good conversation.
Yeah, it was a good conversation.
You're enjoying yourself.
Yeah, I was totally enjoying myself. And, after about 5 minutes in this hour-long interview, one of them started laughing. Right. And I thought, oh shit, pardon my French. I messed up, so I tried to fix it. And then another one started laughing, and then another one of them started laughing so hard he nearly fell off his chair. Another one had to grab his chair because he was leaning back laughing, and he nearly fell over.
Wow, you were not doing good then.
No, and I'm like, oh no, what did I do?
I don't think humor and cracking up the interviewers is...
It's good.
Like, they're all dressed up in their uniforms.
The finest, yeah.
This is very serious.
Very, very serious, right? And they were like really serious when I walked in. And then they asked me another question, and I tried to answer the best I could, so not to make them laugh, but it was impossible. Everything I said would just crack them up completely. It was like really bad.
I guess they really felt you needed a communications education. Since you obviously got in, right? They thought, wow, she really knows to go to school here. Know what they say.
So I said goodbye, and then I left, right? And I was like gutted,
Yeah, because that's not what you're looking for.
No. And they said, okay, so you'll hear from us in about 4 months. Same story.
4 more months? Oh,
yeah, because it was 4 months it was probably December. So school starts in August. And so it was like before they would send out everybody's acceptance or rejection was about 4 months, right? But that was 4 months when I was supposed to have my interview, because as an adult student, we come in last.
I see.
Right. So anyways, about a week later, I get a big package from the university, and it's an acceptance letter.
Those are so nice, aren't they?
I know. And I was like, whoa. One of the questions was, okay, so you want to come to, it was Dublin City University. How many other universities have you applied for? So I said, none. And they said, what? You haven't applied for any other universities? I said, no. Why? Says, because I'm not interested in going to any university. I'm not interested in this university, actually. I'm just interested in the communications degree. That's what I want. And you're doing it, and nobody else is, so that's what I want.
That's what I want.
And they were like, okay.
You're such a conformist, honey.
Yeah. And I was like, I had no idea you were supposed to apply for more university than one,
Of course.
Because I wasn't interested in it. It's like, it wasn't. And anyways, so that was the thing. And then, of course, I had 2 toddlers and a baby. And
generally speaking, toddlers are called babies. So you had 3 babies.
Yeah. And then they said, obviously, I had to take a year. I took a year off from university to gather my money. And they said I could skip the first year because it was foundational courses. So I just did the last 3. And after... Yeah, so I had to drive my kids to school. Oh, yeah, and because my youngest needed to go to school for me to be able to go to university, so...
That's why you had to wait.
Yeah, I had to wait a little while. But yeah, it was pretty... I mean, all the other students who spend all day, 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 at night in the library near exam times, I would write my essays or the exams, and I would... the exams now, but the essays... essays and other things. I would write them, run into the library, grab random journals and books and write quotes down and pages and things and run out again. And then just fit them in as far as I could in my work. But it was good. I got second by 1 point from valedictorian, so it was pretty good. And the girl who got it, she was homeschooled. She had never been to a school in her life. And I helped her with her thesis too. So that was my 1 point that got over me. But yeah, it was a different experience for me. And I was brought up by 2 university professors. I actually went to university as a toddler to their nursery. I went into the university nursery as a toddler. And my house was always filled with intellectuals from different departments, and I grew up in that environment and I loved it. And I could have carried on in a very, very intellectual academic career. And I would have been stuck there. I would have been very happy stuck there. Because I loved it. I loved studying, I loved research, I loved learning new things and learning about other people's thoughts and ideas and experimenting with new technologies and all that stuff. I love it. But today's education, I have seen, is not that, right? I've seen that. I mean, there might be some of that, and it'd be great if Grace did manage to get into that. But I haven't seen it from the other kids that we know that go to college. I mean, Cam and Laurie and stuff. I haven't seen that energy or that part of it. So.
Yeah, with Cam, I noticed him when I have a conversation about something. Now he actually has inputs outside of programmed inputs. It's not repetition. He doesn't just repeat what somebody's told him. He has original thought, original idea, and creativity, and rebuttal. So for him, Stanford and his degrees in product design has creative thought. So they have to be outside of repeat, because you can't have original thought if it's all repeat thought.
Right.
So in his case, he got football, he got a reasonably good entrepreneurial type education within a structure. And Stanford has some of the worst of the worst. I mean, this week they started testing on babies, the little shots things, you know. It's like, come on, guys.
Oh my God. It's
a giant university, so it has a lot of everything and all levels in between. The big, you know, some of the most recent studies on the, pardon my language, bullshit about face masks comes from Stanford. Their study says the face mask and asymptomatic spread is all bullshit. At the same time, they have the opposite.
In Stanford too.
And Stanford too. Also the same professors at Stanford doing the same science, coming up with the opposite conclusion, right?
Yeah.
That face masks are very important, and et cetera, et cetera. And the very original Professor Iodanis, who's a professor at Stanford who studies pandemics and epidemics, he said the lockdown and everything else is complete and utter horseshit. Don't do it. At Stanford. At Stanford's lockdown, and of course did the opposite of what he said.
Right.
Their own professors. Because also their own professor said, lock everything down. So,
other professors, not him, right?
Right. Other Stanford professors in medicine. Yeah. He's the only one that's the epidemiologist and all of that. And he's the one that says, don't do that. But the other doctors say, yeah, you got to. And they did lock down, and they did follow all of the rules, and they did, all that. I do see that the football team, in the county they were in, they weren't allowed to have practice. They weren't allowed to have the kids at the dorm. They weren't allowed to have the kids in the gym, on the field together, or anything. And so the last 4 weeks of their football season, instead of canceling it, which by theory, because that's how the rules were for their school, they just decided to live on the road the whole month and went to states where the rules didn't forbid them from doing what they wanted to do. So they're a little bit rebel, right?
Yeah.
Because, yeah. But in the case of Stanford as a university, I guess it's like other places too. There's all of the possibilities exist. You can become totally conformed, or you can maybe pick and select and find the ones that give you the education that opens your mind a little bit. I guess. It did work for Cam. Maybe you haven't noticed it, but you haven't talked to Cameron about...
I have noticed a little change, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because he was talking about starting a food truck, you know? Him and his boys were going to start a food truck. And I had some ideas and inputs in it because I've been thinking about it for a while, too. Yeah. And we had a back and forth about it. And some ideas like, wow, those are great ideas. And some of his were like, oh, I never thought about that. So that's a good idea. Yeah. So, good expansion.
Before the extent of his conversation would be, I don't know.
I remember. He didn't have a lot of inputs.
I don't know, yeah.
So, there has been some maturation, and definitely some of that. Which brings me to Grace. So, she got accepted to Stanford, and she got accepted at Columbia, the two main schools that she would pick between. And I looked into both schools, and my gut instinct, my feeling in the instant was, obviously Stanford. Same coast, your brother's there. It's a good school. There's opportunities there. Nice big campus. And the Columbia one's in the middle of New York City. Forget it, man. I was like, it's very good. You got in a nice school. Good job, honey. But what? Why would you want to? You don't want to live in the middle of downtown New York,
but she thought she did.
Especially with what's coming. Well, I found out later that she's a big fan of Friends.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And do you know where Friends is set?
Yes.
So, strangely enough, while we were skipping to the middle of the story, while we were in New York, what do you think was playing on the TV in the evening? Yes. I didn't make the connection, honestly. Yeah. I watched Friends before. I don't know where it's at. I mean, I could deduce it if I watched and really cared, but I didn't care, and I only watched it every now and then. When we went on one of the bus tours, they said, this is where Friends is supposed to be set. Although, in fact, it's a set in Los Angeles. And it was it's like, I was like, I had just started putting these pieces together.
And Daniela picked it out. She took a photo. You took a photo and sent it. And then Daniela said, "Oh, that looks like the set of Friends in LA."
Yes. She knew. Grace and I didn't know. I didn't know we were in New York because she likes Friends.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
That's why she applied probably to Columbia, because it's Ivy League in New York and she watches Friends and she likes that.
Yeah.
I'm starting to put it together. I'm a little slow on the up. So there's a little bit of a deflation when she found out Friends was actually in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's why it's always sunny there.
It was quite rainy when we were in New York. Anyway. So, I'm like, that's all very fine and dandy, New York and California. Geez, obviously, Stanford with your brother in California where it's sunny and warm and you have a giant campus. Why would you want to go to the middle of New York City? Especially with the conversations that we've been having.
Mm-hmm. Go stay away from the cities.
Staying away from cities. If you live there, you want to move, find your tribe, et cetera, The logical conclusion would be, Grace, go hang out with your brother in Stanford. And, when they call it shit stuff. It's SHTF. You ever heard that before?
Yeah.
Well, when the SHTF happens, you're on the same coast. We just drive down and pick you up. Mm-hmm. Although she does not listen to the conversations I have very much. All my homeschools seem to go through one ear and out the other. Yeah. I know it's sticking in there somewhere. Because I tell her all these times, and she hasn't got vaccinated, and she had plenty of opportunity.
Yeah.
And she said she isn't, and she doesn't want to, and she won't. But a different topic. I decided I should look, because I got some of the emails. For some reason, I get all the emails she gets from Columbia. I don't get all the emails she gets from Stanford. I don't get all the emails she gets from Duke or Northwestern or any of those places. But Columbia's goes right to my inbox.
Because they know you like them.
I don't know how they got my email.
That's interesting.
And so I opened them and looked at them. I was like, oh, wow. 60,000 people applied and they only picked 700 this year.
Yep. And Grace is one of them.
Because last year everyone could defer that wanted to, didn't go because of the coronavirus stuff,
Yeah.
So the percent that they picked is somewhere around 1%.
Yeah.
Super duper selective. And she got assigned these people and this CUSP thing, which is a scholar program.
Yeah.
Where they take you and bring you to the Museum of Art, they bring you to the Museum of History, you go to these lectures with these blah blah smuckety smucks that have really interesting things to talk about, or at least it looks like it. Mm-hmm. So you get a summer internship where you get paid $20,000 for a college job in the summer. Whatever job you can make up, you propose it. And there's a whole list of places that you can go. And if you propose it and send it, because you're at Columbia, they accept you.
Yeah.
You're already guaranteed a okay. And you get it. I was like, come on, that's pretty damn sweet. What is these jobs? Let me check this out. So I became interested because the opportunities there were pretty golden.
Pretty good, yeah.
Stanford said the same thing. If you come up with it and write it, we'll fund it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Columbia has it also. But there's a bit of a difference between West Coast and East Coast, Yeah. I lived on the East Coast when I was in the Coast Guard. Mm-hmm. And Washington, D.C. and these areas and all that, and the power places, they felt very, at the time when I went there, I was like, whoa, these are pretty cool. And then we went to Europe and I was like, oh, geez. I went to one of the summer palaces in Spain. And that summer palace in Spain made anything I had ever seen in any of the cities of DC, Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, the cream de la creams of everywhere in the U.S. We go like, this is the summer palace?
Yeah.
They have many summer palaces.
They do.
And this is just one of them. Actually, this one is so discarded. It's just the park now.
Yes.
The real, actual summer palace. Of course, we're not at it.
Right.
Right. It's like, oh my gosh. I don't know. Anyway. Gulp. Where were we?
So you've been to those towns in cities in
yeah, and I was super impressed, okay, and then I became much less impressed. And so New York, DC, East Coast is like whatever. Europe, that's wow. And I had never been to New York, so those two little letters, the CUSP thing, the Scholars Program, I guess the entrance into an entirely different structure.
From the res.
From the res, yeah, completely and totally different. And she had wanted to go there. Yeah, I didn't know it was because of friends, but that was the bait for her, and, to go look. And she was interested. So, I was actually a bit shocked. Just like, where do you want to go to school? Manhattan Island. I'm like, what, are you kidding me? Where does that come from? Because she's a res girl.
Yes.
She's lived in a village of 1,000 her entire life. She's visited other towns, like we go to Seattle to get on the airplane, or go to the mall once in a while, but the mall is 5-hour drive. It's not like down the street or something. Yeah. So to have a dream of wanting to live in Manhattan, I was like, where did that come from? Yeah. But okay. Well, when I read the emails a little bit, I was hooked into, okay, at least let's look, because these are very interesting programs, and this is an exposure to a world that you otherwise will never ever probably become exposed to any of this information data or people. Right. So let's at least go look. And then we looked up what you had to do to go look. If you want to travel from
to New York,
Seattle to New York, you have to take coronavirus test. You have to quarantine. It's
10 days.
10 days and all this crap. I'm like, oh my God.
It's not going to happen.
So I committed to let's go look, but geez, you have to do all this. So I told her, okay, so in order to go to visit that campus, we've got to do this and do that and the other. I said, we could probably squeak around it. I can find an airport in like New Jersey or something, and then we can rent a car and drive in, because they don't have the same restrictions for driving as they do for flying. And she's like, Dad, forget it. Remember she was here with you? It's like, forget it. I'll just go to Stanford.
Yeah.
When it was like the energy of I'll just go to Stanford was like, settle.
Yeah.
I'll just settle for Stanford. Yeah. Which anyone in their right mind goes like, Stanford's not a settle school. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Stanford is like, yes! So the whole energy of that, I sat with it and I slept with it, and it didn't feel right to me. There was something off. It was like, that's a niggle. I had a serious niggle about it. And so the next morning I looked again at the travel restrictions, and I had gotten another email from Columbia, of course, and it was a invitation for, I don't remember what, a complete virtual week visits, 2 weeks of virtual visits, and it was a giant calendar of events every 2 or 3 a day, gathering with the Native Americans. I got a letter from them. The tribal schools groups every Friday gets together, have Fry Bread Friday, and they have an actual community of people, and they gather together and cook, enjoy their experience, and help each other manage going from small res to New York City, and that's good. Yeah. Good support. Yeah, so I was like, gosh, that really that looks really nice. And then I checked the visiting regulations, and New York City dropped them that very night. There were no restrictions for any visitor flying in. None at all.
Yeah. And no masking in this city.
The mask mandate was dropped. You don't have to wear a mask outside.
Only in the metro?
Only on the subway, yeah. Subway or the bus. Yeah. You have to wear a mask.
And stores,
but everything else was dropped. No, in the stores you're not required to, and the stores can require or whatever if they want to, but you have an exclusion or exception if you want to. You don't have to. There's no mandate or law or rule or anything.
So
there is a law
for
the sub. But yeah, it's like overnight New York went from clamp down to, it's open. You want to come? You're welcome to come. So I called her Grace. I said, guess what, Grace? No requirements at all. Everything's dropped last night.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to go? She's
It's
like, yes, let's go. Yeah, my birthday present. Yeah. So yeah, we booked our flights and holy camole, $300 round trips. It's practically free.
I know.
I spent more than that just flying to the San Diego or LA.
Yeah.
And we got a hotel at the airport. And it was an interesting one, TWA from the 1960s. What was interesting about that was that the conversations we've had before about how the people who came, like, to Ozette where we were living, they brought their entire stuff from Europe, Sweden, on a ship, everything they could carry. I don't know how they carried all that stuff, but they carry it and they get it packed all the way to the beach in Nia Bay, and then get a tribal guys to put it in a canoe and paddle them to the beach down in Ozette, and then pack that stuff up the beach into the woods and build a city. You know, okay, Ozette isn't a city, but you know,
not anymore.
It had a store, it had gardens and milk.
And a post office.
I mean, all of the milk and dairy products that fed the peninsula were from the Cowan farm, which is right here.
Yeah, exactly.
And they built it out of the trees.
Yeah.
Well, the TWA airport building was kind of designed by the same guy who made the arch in St. Louis and the New York City, or no, the Ford Motor Company, or one of those big ones. Their central office is a dome, you know. Back in the day, it was it's organic flower shape. Yeah. It's beyond anything you can imagine. Yeah. I mean, it's not beyond what you can imagine. It is beyond anything that you see today, mostly.
Right.
Anyways, it reminded me of that energy of the originality of design and structure and the willingness to, like, what are we going to build? Oh, we're going to build this imaginary, wonderful flower butterfly design airport terminal in the middle of the swamp. And they're like, okay, let's do that. How did you build it? Oh, I put it on the back of the menu. Literally, here's what it looks like on the back of the menu at the restaurant.
Yeah, this is what
and that's what they built. Yeah. Anyway, so the invitation was clear, and we went. And I heard and had some assumptions about the city based on, you know, the things that I've heard from other people, which is it's super crowded, it's super dirty, subway's noisy, full of crazy people. It's nasty.
It's nasty.
Yeah. And here's what I saw. It was empty.
There's hardly any people.
There were, you know, a handful of people on the sidewalk when we walk around, but mostly not that many. Yeah,
when I saw the photographs, so. I always think of those post-apocalyptic photograph or like movies when all the roads in New York
Everybody's
are empty.
Gone,
yeah, that's what I felt.
There weren't very many cars on the road. We got on the tour bus and we would be like the only one on the bus. There was nobody else, just us. And this is the hop-on, hop-off bus that goes right through Manhattan, does a loop, and then it goes to the other side, does a loop. So on Saturday, when we rode our bus on Saturday, we had some people with us.
Couple.
Yeah. Let me just say, we didn't have any problem picking whatever seat we wanted. But
and you were able to sit together too.
We sat together, of course, yeah, and there was no line to get on, and you just hop on, hop off, and we're cruising the city and marveling at the buildings. You know, the buildings are just, they're buildings it reminded me of Europe, some of the buildings, of course, and some of the moderner ones.
The ingenuity of the human creativity is just amazing. Yeah,
it was just stunning.
Super amazing.
And it was clean. There was a few dirty spots, but not that many. It was mostly clean. And there weren't that many people, really. I mean, it was like if we went to Walmart, there's more people at Walmart in Port Angeles.
Wow.
If we go to Costco in Sequim, it is way more people in Costco at Sequim than there is in New York. When you want to go to the fanciest restaurant or the not fanciest restaurant, anywhere you go in New York, there's no line.
Wow.
Less people than in Sequim.
Wow.
I remember getting there and wondering when I was there, I was like, why? Why Manhattan and New York? What am I here for individually? I know what I'm here for, my daughter.
Yeah.
To go explore this college and this campus and see if this is actually a good thing for her to make this decision, not out of settle, but to make the decision to go where she's going to go to school based on
what I want,
experience, and it be actually there, right? And then actually be there, engaged with here, and say, yes, thank you for the opportunity. No, I will go here. Or yes, thank you for the opportunity. I really want to go here. But make this decision based on
knowing
something other than low frequency. You know, it's like make a high frequency choice. And I consider data requirement and exposure and experience as part of it. And, you know, honestly, her first experience was repulsion, rejection, and flight. Because you go from 1,000 to this millions of people city. And we jumped right on subways, right in the heart, in the middle. Subway, huh? Yeah, never. Wow. Right in the heart of the middle of the practically largest city in the world, you know, in the middle of the deepest, darkest parts of it. And just, we went right 3 trains in, 2 subways up, and down in the middle of the end of Manhattan. Like, we got right off the airplane and right on the subway and right into the end of the deepest part of Manhattan. Literally an hour of travel on subways, trains, and all that stuff. And you couldn't get further from Nia Bay, I'm telling you. She was deer in the lights. Oh my gosh. She kept it together, but I could tell that she was quite terrified, yeah.
But she heard that with her, so.
Yeah, and when I mean terrified, is like I could see the fight or flight response being activated, and she was in flight mode, which meant that the most safety was in conforming in the most ways.
Right.
So she was using that, and she was very, very upset. Anything that I did that was different than everybody around us was doing. So it was, and she can't really tell her dad what to do very good. She could try, but not many people could tell me what to do. Hanging out with you has taught me that. You don't tell me what to do. I'll do it if I agree with it. Exactly. How's that?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, that was a little bit trouble. A little troublesome, a little difficult.
Yeah.
But I had a feeling that it'd be 3 days or so of that, so that we would move through the flight and might be even into fight. Because you know how victim-aggressor, low-frequency energies are, right?
Yeah.
Once the flight is exhausted, the fight comes. The victims becomes the aggressors. It's the same game, but opposite ends of it. And I figured we probably would have some of that. And we did. And we did get to the fight part, because she was very, very upset with me about masks, about this, about that kind of stuff. And, you know, I wanted her to have and make these choices based on information, and that required engagement. And so some of the school functions, since they were not in person, they had the campus closed for visitors. They're virtual, but we're there in a virtual. So at least, you know, go to the talk.
Virtual talk.
Go to the virtual talk and introduce yourself and, you know, engage. And, you know, we had a bit of a fight about that. But once we managed the flight and the fight, once we had exhausted that and processed the energy that came with it, the next day, completely different person.
That's really good. Well done.
Yeah. And that last day we went to her campus again. We've gone the very first day, and then we did city, and I guess I would call it immersion therapy. That's what I was calling it. Full on immersion till midnight, all day, every day at New York City, getting the immersion part done so that we could do the last part, which was after those had been processed, after all of the low frequency engagement parts had been dealt with and handled and processed and triggered and whatever's and cleaned. Then the last day we went again, and it was like Shangri-La for her that day. And then you could actually see the buildings and the support network and appreciate what was there instead of seeing the lens of fright or flight or fight, right? Yeah. So anyway, that was the experience. And, you know, apparently there's an Irish pub. It's the best on the planet, even better than Ireland.
Because they don't have Irish pubs in Ireland, they just have
pubs. The Dead Rabbit.
Okay.
We went there. I walked right in the door, and there was no reservation required, and apparently usually it's about a year wait.
Wow, yeah.
New York City is awesome. We had pizza. We had their choice of pizza places. Oh my gosh, we had the best pizza. I heard New York pizza was good.
And you had to wait for... Oh yeah, the queues.
There was no queue. Right? Yeah. I just walked up to the counter and ordered pizza in the best pizza in New York's places. We had several to pick from, so we went to a couple of them, right?
Nice.
And there's no lines there. You just walk right up the counter and get your pizza.
And
it was delicious.
You know your pizza.
Oh my God. So if you never had it, I suggest that you go while it's still there. It's really damn good.
So one question I have, well, a couple of them, is, first of all, I mean, you talked about how the subway is closed for 2 hours a day so they can clean it up.
Nice. I thought the subway was nice and clean.
Yeah, it's nice and clean and it's not crowded.
There was nobody on those things. Yeah. Every now and then there would be 2 or 3 people, but if you wait a second, they usually get off.
And the other question to me would be, even though we've been talking to everybody to stay away from cities, why would you encourage or facilitate for your daughter to go and live in a city, to go to college?
Yeah, it's a super good question. That was one of the reasons I didn't even want to bother going. But the invitation and the call to go were very strong. And so when I looked at these invitations and the clear path, it felt like a weekend pass. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you are familiar with that term.
Yes.
It felt like there's a weekend pass. We had a weekend pass to go. I am of the opinion that if she were to accept at Columbia, which incidentally she did on accident, for socks, because they sent her socks, that she won't actually be going to the city for a couple of years at least.
She won't be going to the city?
No, it will be online.
Yeah, everybody was online.
Everybody's going to be online. Whatever university she decides to go to, probably.
Right.
Because of what comes, What comes most likely is not conducive to gatherings, and especially in cities.
Apart from the accidental acceptance, has she made up her mind yet?
I don't believe so. Mm. What I liked about the Columbia thing specifically was the access, the support, the support of a group.
Yeah.
Which I think that's normal. It's a curriculum that they have called a core curriculum, which is unique among universities according to them. No one else has it, where everyone has the same classes for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And they're all designed to expose you to
everything.
Culture, in a sense. Art.
Oh, good.
Music. The classics and literature.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah. It's like... when you go to school and you have requirements, you have to take a science credit, you have to take an art credit, you have to take a language credit. But
you can choose normal. Which ones,
But you can choose. This one you don't choose. Mm-hmm. Everyone has this, everyone has this, and everyone has this, and it lasts for 2 years. Everyone has a shared experience of culture and a conversation. Mm. There's 10 or 12 people in a class. There's 65 professors teaching the same class. Mm. And all of them have a different flavor to it, but they all have a basic, this is what's going to be in it. Yeah. And then they have groups that can have the conversation about this. So it's kind of like culturing. It's as I imagine when you explained to me how some of the schools, like there's universities that have really hard acceptance rates. Mm-hmm. There's other universities that you don't know the name of. Mm-hmm. And you don't go there unless you're invited.
Right.
And there's like 7 people in it, or 10 or 12. And the way that they teach those, they don't teach those students how to excel at their job.
No.
They don't even teach those students
pass exams.
Necessarily pass exams or any of those things. They're taught another thing, which is how to rule.
Yeah.
And how to have a good conversation with each other.
Yeah. Or even with yourself.
Yeah. So this felt to me like it had those flavors. Mm. That this wasn't teach you to repeat. This was exposure to culture, of different kind of culture that you don't even, at this point, know to ask if you're interested in. Yeah. You just go, and then it might be that sparks inspiration. Mm. That, I didn't know I was interested in French literature, or I don't know, whatever else, or Monet's art.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even know Monet had art. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I thought that would be a good thing for a girl, small town res, to have exposure to, because her exposure is our exposure. Mm. Because then when I have a conversation with her, she can talk about things that I have no idea about.
And she won't say, I don't know.
And she won't say, I don't know.
Because she answers that to everything too.
Yes.
I don't know.
I don't know. Right. So those were the interesting bits. So those were the whys when I went to New York. I don't believe that she'll live there. I don't expect her to live there. Certainly not in the next couple of years. I expect it'll be homeschooled just like all the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. I expect that she'll be exposed to things that she wouldn't otherwise be exposed to in a way that will open and broaden her experience of reality. Mm. To give her the opportunity to be and explore and find what she's actually interested in, because she actually doesn't know.
Right.
So that's why, for me.
Yeah.
So I found myself, interestingly enough, on a personal level, on Manhattan Island, a place I never expected to ever want to go to. Uh-huh. And I found that Manhattan Island was clean. It wasn't very crowded. There's hardly any people there. The restaurants and the food is excellent. There's no lines, no reservations hardly. There isn't reservations required, although you can make them if you want to. Yeah. We made one and canceled it anyway. And furthermore, the subways and the trains and the public transportation, they're excellent.
And empty.
Often, and they're not crowded. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, they shut them down for a complete steam cleaning. Mm-hmm. And so the walls in the subways are pristine. They sparkle. It's like sparkly, even better than London's. Wow. It was like there's tiles and there's art, and the art's clean and you can see it. It's beautiful. And it's fast and it's inexpensive. Coats and pants are like $20. Mm. Not like here, where it's $300.
Mm. Interesting.
And as I was walking and I was sitting there, I was wondering, this is quite a bit different experience than I have been led to believe that New York is like. Mm-hmm. It's like when we went to London. I've heard it rains a lot there. Mm-hmm. When we were there, it was sunny and beautiful.
Oh, we booked the sun and shine for you.
It was fantastic. I think London is the most sunniest, beautifulest place you've ever been. And turns out Manhattan is like that too, except for it's a bit rainy and cold sometimes, although it does get warmer. When we went to Rome, that was another place that kind of got me off guard because I immediately had a connection to it. Yeah. And at a level that I didn't expect. Yeah. And as we walked around in quite a random way, we ended up at a place that had significance for me in a past life. Yeah. A past life memory I walked to, I was like, oh, the word is, oh, fuck. Yes. And it had been abandoned and fallen into a bit of ruin, but not completely destroyed, and then it had been fenced and it was being reconstructed randomly, and it isn't on any guide. It wasn't on any guides. It wasn't on any tours. It wasn't any here's goes look ats. And we went to all the guide go look ats. Then we went on a random walkabout and landed here, and I went, oh fuck. Yeah. And I knew at that moment what was going on. Right. So you asked me if there was anything significant about Manhattan, and I couldn't quite understand why I felt similar to Rome. This is a fabulous place, and I love it here. And you're like, what? Are you kidding me? And everybody that is my friends that knows me says, what? I've been there. That is not that. That is not nice there. How could you possibly like it? I was like, I don't know. It's really fantastic. And I said, well, there's probably something personally significant here. I'll find out. I feel, and I went to where I was drawn, which was the southern tip of Manhattan. And I found there's a place there called Battery Park. Mm-hmm. And we got dropped off on the bus, and that's where we had Irish pub lunch. It was quite good. And I said, I think I'll go for a walk here and see what it is here. What is here? And I walked 15 minutes. And I walked straight to
another building.
A building that resembles the building in Rome exactly and precisely in almost all ways. And I was like, oh, fuck. This is what it is. Pardon my language, but, I am a fisherman sometimes. Or at least I used to be a fisherman sometimes.
A fisherman, right?
And it comes with the boat. Yeah. they give you a book. Here's the words you have to use. Otherwise, your crew won't be able to hear you. It's just the way it is. I haven't quite cleaned that up. Anyways, yeah, I had the same experience and a visceral one at that. And before I had gone there, before I had gone on a little walkabout, you'd asked me the night before, and I said that I felt that I had a significant life at some point around George Washington time. Mm-hmm. And that is when that thing was built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some years ago we did a regression session, and you landed in the East Coast, and it was by the water's edge.
It turns out this was built in the water.
There you go. Yeah. But we thought it had to do with boats.
It does have to do with boats.
Yeah.
It's to stop those damn British. No cannon was actually fired at any British, so there's that. But it was built for that purpose, and it was built in the water a little bit. Yeah. Since that time, they have taken the landfill from the buildings and filled it in. So now it's on land, but it was in the water.
Wow.
And it was a defense structure for stopping the British from invading. Mm. And no British ever showed up. At that time, they were already done, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's like a little idyllic fort in the same shape. As the mausoleum there. Yeah. And it was clear and obvious with the trees. I mean, it was so synchronistically exactly the same as like take that time, plop it here. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. That's how it was, and that's how it felt. So it was clear that was a significant memory in place, and probably why I have affinity for the place. Mm. On top of the fact that, despite what everybody says, Manhattan is not crowded or dirty, and the subway is nice and clean.
So people should move to Manhattan now?
I don't know if that's a good idea, because despite the fact that it's clean and not crowded, the ones that are there are double masked.
Triple masked and with shields
with gloves and shields.
Wow. That's fearful, man.
Despite the fact that there's no requirement to wear a mask outside,
they're still doing it.
I literally couldn't find but a handful, maybe like 5 people my entire trip out of, I must have seen thousands, because despite it not being crowded, we were there for the whole week, and we traveled and covered the entire island top to bottom. We saw thousands and thousands of people. Yeah. I saw 5 without a mask on.
Wow.
And they weren't bums either. The bums, even though they didn't have clothes,
they had masks on.
They had masks. 5 people in an entire city. So I don't expect that's going to be a pleasant place here directly.
Mm. Okay.
I wouldn't move there yet. Mm-hmm.
Yet.
But hold in your mind what it looks like when...
In 10 years?
80% of the low-frequency dark workers are no longer there. Mm. When the 80%? Population, remember, resembles 1920... Well, it looks like 99.5% of who 99.8%, maybe closer, of the ones I saw. There was only 0.2% that... I mean, maybe they're masked... No, if you're double masking, I'm sorry. That wasn't because... That was not because you're required to. That's because you volunteered.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you should move there yet. Oh, definitely would not. When I just asked the guy, I was like, hey guy, should we move there? She's like, what are you fucking kidding me? No, not yet. Yeah. But you can hold in your thought, what it looks like when 80% of the dark workers are gone. Yeah. There's power, structure, there's all those things, and it doesn't have to be a negative thing. Mm-hmm. And some of those buildings they'll last for a few hundred years, but they're not going to last for a few thousand, don't worry. Mm-hmm. And there is a structure and cycle that's there now that it's evolved into, and it supports itself, and it has the machinery and the wildlife and the things that are like it, and it can evolve like our do you remember that giant oil well drilling thing that was going to Alaska?
Oh, yeah.
The eagles and the rainbows. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the same there. Eagles the birds and the crabs don't care if they live in a shelf of a cliff or the shelf of a skyscraper. It's still a shelf. Yeah. They're quite fine with it. Mm-hmm. And when the windows bust, and they can go inside too. Mm-hmm. Not all of those places are going to stay perfect, but some of them are. Some of them are fantastic. So in 10 years when what was that article? Do you remember the title of that? Imagine what the world will be like if 80% of the dark workers are gone.
No,
how's
not
it go?
80% of the dark workers. It was, imagine that all promoters of darkness are left the planet. What would that look like?
Exactly. So that's the image to hold of a city like, and an island like Manhattan. What would it look like if that was true? And what would it be like if that was true?
Yeah.
Well, I had a taste of what it would resemble.
Yeah.
Minus the double masking stuff. It isn't going to be crowded. It's going to be quite supportive. It's going to be pretty interesting.
We'll revisit this conversation in 10 years. We'll circle back in 10 years.
Are we going to circle back in 10 years?
Yeah.
Or you have your doubts?
Yes.
Well, okay then. 10 years. What is today?
2021.
This is April 20s-ish.
21st.
20s, 30s, somewhere in April 2021. So
21st.
April of 2031, we will circle back at Manhattan. And we'll see if the vision matches the
prediction.
The vision / prediction matches the real.
Right.
Is Manhattan, in fact, a decent place with clean, not a lot of people, excellent food, a supportive environment for the collections of past humans' endeavors to be, looked at, experienced. Yeah, something like that.
Sounds good.
It's a good storehouse. It's a warehouse. And it's a bit more natural than it was. Although I have to say, Central Park was a good approximation of natural. It wasn't that much. I mean, Grace was like, I had some sticky coffee mess on my hands, hot chocolate mess on my hands. So I went to go wash my hands. He said, Dad, go to the bathroom and wash your hands in the sink. It's like, there's a lake right there. I'll just wash my hands in the lake. She says, that lake is filthy. It's like, what are you talking about? I went down to the lake.
Okay,
yeah. It's kind of dirty. It's a little brown. The guys were fishing in it, and I was washed my hands in it. They were looking at me kind of funny. Like, what are you doing? Washing my hands in the lake. It's like, go use the sink. I didn't. Yeah. Okay, I did. It has some global ascension centering to do. I'll just say that. Yeah. It has a good starting point.
That's good.
So what do we learn at our project that's still not to be announced, or is it?
Not yet.
Not yet, that's right. It's not signed. Well, our experience at that not to be announced thing will probably translate into some kind of experience at Manhattan at some point in the next decade.
Yeah. That sounds like a good plan.
That's my plan. I'm going to keep it.
Nice.
Okay.
I like it.
Do you feel complete?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Like half hour ago or what?
No, it's good.
Oh, it's good.
I enjoyed this conversation very much.
Me too. Love you, honey.
Love you too, darling.
Have a kiss.